All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Retail X Series. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Sapna Shah. I am the founder of Retail X Series. I'm an angel investor. I invest in the future of retail at the pre-seed stage. And I'm very excited to have all of you here for our second to last Retail X of this season. We will have one more event 2 weeks from now, all about raising from strategic investors. So if you haven't already signed up for that one, look out for that. You'll also get an email about it. At the conclusion of this recording, I will be posting it up on the Retail X Series YouTube channel. So if you have to leave early or you missed part of it, you can find it there. You will also, as I said, be put on the email list if you're not already, and be invited to our Slack community. So look out for those things in the next day or two. So let me just kick off and say, welcome, Chelsie. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad to have you. Maybe you could just start off with a little bit about you, your company, what it does, and maybe the kinds of customers you have right now. And then
Great.
we'll kind of get into the meat of it.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here and part of the community. I'm Chelsie Lee, the co-founder and CEO of Shipsy. And we make it simple for any retailer to give their customers what they want, when they want it. So we work with any retailer to allow them to offer on-demand, same-day, or scheduled delivery, either natively on their website online at checkout or through their store point of sale. And more recently launched a no integration model to try and help the retail community, especially during COVID.
Great. And I should have said this before, we will have time for audience questions at the end, but we'll start off with kind of some of the moderated questions we have here. So Chelsie, let's start with kind of sales strategy. I mean, you've been in business for a few years, but at the earliest stages of your startup, before you had kind of a single customer, how did you start targeting? How did you start that process? How did you decide who to target? Kind of walk us through that process.
Mm-hmm. So I would say even before we had a product, I called just about anyone and everyone that I knew within retail from my previous background and asked them if they would find value in offering on-demand delivery without making any major changes to their existing business systems, and paying for shipping is optional. And so that was even before we had a product, and it became increasingly difficult to find someone who said, no, I wouldn't get value in that. So that's when I first knew that we were onto something. And then as far as the vertical or how we went about getting our first few customers, a lot of it came from smaller trade shows in LA that we started or participated in. And it wasn't even a big partnership that we did or anything, but it was just walking around a trade show, for example, really getting the feedback and seeing how the idea resonated with people. Was a big one. Our some from my previous network was really helpful as well. And then for some of our larger customers, I had the opportunity to speak at a Unilever innovation conference that all of the CEOs were a part of. And so some of our major customers came from engagements like that. And now it's great because a lot of our brands or retailers come from our delivery network partners. So to clarify this point, we aggregate the multiple delivery networks all in one. Today, we have access to over 1.2 million drivers across 850 cities in the US. And so we're aggregating all of the delivery networks on one side. And then on the front end for retail, everything is native in their system. So we're this safe playing environment and put a treatment strategy out for both. And so now it's really fun to see a lot of our retailers coming from our delivery networks because everyone in the chain is getting value provided from it.
So I want to go back to that trade show thing. So trade shows have been pretty controversial subject in this community. Certainly a lot of early stage founders find them to be really expensive to attend or to have a booth. Tell me how you made that decision to kind of go after that trade show route.
Yeah. Well, for us, it was a lot of the smaller ones. It wasn't necessarily a shop talk. It would be a free event in downtown LA, or even almost farmers market style, if you will. So we haven't spent a ton of money at all in marketing or really any sales outreach. And so we didn't necessarily target the big shop talks or e-tail West or anything like that initially. And I think that there's also creative ways that you can get around that. So now we have participated in those events, but they have a lot of alternative programs or asking. It never hurts to ask for a discount for something if you think it's going to provide value. You don't know until you ask. It's like asking for a raise, right? You don't know unless you ask. So I would say ask for creative things or people from your network. We had a larger partner of ours had extra tickets. I remember once, and we're like, we have them. Can we just transfer them? And I come from more of a corporate background. And so when you're used to having a budget for those things, it's really hard as a founder when you don't have $25,000 or $50,000 to make a big fancy booth. So I would say look for, if it's a pitch competition or something like that, you can get involved and maybe reduce some of that cost.
And how did you how did you make your pitch at those trade shows? They're generally, I mean, even the smaller ones, my guess is, all the retailers and brands are kind of inundated.
Yeah.
What was this? How was that successful for you?
I think it's a different approach. And instead of going in with a hard sales pitch of, hey, this is Shipsy, of course you want to give it to your customers in an hour, would you find value in that? We paid special attention almost to the types of partners or the types of products that they were selling. And I think it has to be a mutual value. I remember we bought a couple things from someone or subscribed even to a newsletter that they had. And so I think it's about the approach, and there's different ways that you can do that. Of course, there's a formal approach, which is probably a little bit longer winded, or how did you get into this? I think is always a great first question. Whether someone is selling socks or handbags or whatever it might be, I actually think that that's the best first question to ask is, how did you get into selling socks? How did you come about this, or why are you passionate about it? And I think that tells a lot from the get-go, and is a good first start. And you learn about people's background and why they're even doing it.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually. And I think a lot of times we all kind of think like, let me just get into what I can give you and
Yes.
kind of who you are.
Yes.
That's great advice. So going now, kind of leaving the trade show arena. So let's talk about kind of your first customer. Like, who at your first customers were you really talking to? Like, what did you know? Kind of which person or title or level you needed to talk to? Was that kind of a process you had to figure out? Like, and maybe has that changed since the early days?
Definitely. This is a really hard one, especially in our business, because we touch store operations, we touch the technology, we touch some of their systems, or we have visibility onto some of their systems. So and marketing, right? Marketing is a huge one. So we touch so many parts and pieces. This was a really challenging thing for us in the beginning, because we originally thought, well, who's going to be in charge of this? Maybe operations, or maybe head of ecom. But we really touch every part and piece of the organization. And so we have now since learned that it's everyone mutually and jointly engaged. So now we have, let's say, a weekly half-hour stand up with some of those major customers, where someone from the marketing team is there, someone from the operational team is there, someone from the technology team is there. And especially with larger organizations, it's not surprising, but I catch myself forgetting that they don't always communicate every single thing that's going on, just like I don't always communicate every single thing that's going on, with other members of my team. And so that is something that we've definitely adjusted. And now having that recurring calendar of how is it going, or what's next? What marketing promotion are we working on? Or let's review the impact that we've had so far in these specific locations, or how can we make these enhancements to make the experience better for the end consumer? So my recommendation on that would be anyone that you think touches it, it's way more efficient, even if it's just a half-hour, 15-minute check-in every week or every other week or once a month, depending on the customer needs, to really get everyone on the same page, but also have a very clear agenda so that it doesn't turn into so many cooks in the kitchen without that structure. Because large organizations, especially, like I said, they don't necessarily talk to each other about every single detail. So that would be my advice on it.
And in that early sales process, did you also get them all together in a room, or were you pitching them kind of individually, the operations, the tech, the whatever?
More individually at first. I have a theory. I think an old mentor had told me at one point. He drew it on a big whiteboard. It's like a smiley face of CEO engagement. And in the beginning of the sales cycle, you pitch to the CEO. That's the I, if you will. And then the smiley face is, okay, let me work with your team and dig up all these findings. What is this? Let me interview someone who's a store manager. Let me interview someone who worked on a recent technology project within your ecom team. Like, let me do some digging and find out what all these parts and pieces are. Then at the end of it, rally everyone together and say, here's the hypothesis that we have. Here are the 3 key things that we believe we can have an impact on and the outcome that we anticipate. And so that's, I think, kind of the trajectory of high executive engagement initially. Do your homework even before that of listen to their earnings calls while you're taking a shower. Like that's some of those things, like really understanding, or listen to a podcast that an executive was on. And doing that prep, I think a lot of people don't, but it shows a lot more mutual interest. And I think respect if you're going into a meeting with a large retailer like that or their executive team.
Yeah. And then you sort of, my understanding is that you have some of these like larger, bigger enterprise kind of customers, but then you also have the smaller brands too, like from the flea market type trade. Did you start specifically with the smaller and then move to the larger, or were they kind of parallel paths for you?
Primarily, we started with a handful of the smaller ones. We needed to learn a lot. And even with our first big wave of major customers, we learned a lot of really, really hard lessons through that and have since adapted. And now I would say long term, it's probably, 80% of our business comes from larger retailers. But I believe that there's also a massive opportunity for the SMB, kind of the mid SMB market. The Allbirds, for example, the Chubbies, the Rebecca Minkoffs, because they have their own systems that we have probably already integrated with. So it makes the transition really easy. And they're not going to go out and get their own drivers like a Home Depot or something. So we have kind of those 3 different channels. And then we've rolled out a few things from those really hard learnings for those different types of customers. They don't all fit in the same box, right? And every retailer is certainly different, but we've normalized it for large enterprise retailers so that they can basically build their own API that they want in there with the code that we already have. And then on the other side of it, once they choose their flavor, if you will, here's the code that you need to implement. And then we have other platforms like our Shopify app for smaller brands that can go sign up on their own and be up and running, within the same day.
Got it. That was helpful. Thank you. And did you start with these early customers with pilots, or kind of how did you structure that original arrangement?
This one is a really tough one for me. Again, coming from corporate America, I remember speaking with other founders and our first batch of large retail customers saying, well, we'll pilot it for a month. And I was like, what do you mean? It was just such a foreign concept to me because I wasn't familiar with the startup world and what a pilot really was. It was just confusing. I come from, here's a 2-year, couple $1 million contract instead of what do you mean? What's a pilot? It really threw me, it was a tough lesson for me. So to answer your question, we didn't necessarily start with like an unpaid pilot. I think not to say that pilots are bad, they're good and you have to do them in a lot of instances. So we try to avoid them. And my perspective on it has shifted in that it's okay. You want to do a pilot? I know that we're going to be wildly successful together and learn together. And I think that transparency and vulnerability in working with brands, whether it's something that they ask for or, we don't have 250 employees to support them. So I think as long as you're honest about timelines and what you can do versus what you can't, and also making sure that you can adapt to what will be best for the business long term. We had a couple customers that wanted a lot of really custom things that we couldn't really apply to other customers. But sometimes you need to do those things early on just to get that first big wave of brands.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think this question of pilots has always been, again, another very controversial
Yeah.
topic in previous Retail X discussions of should you do pilots? Should they be free? Should they be paid? And I think
Yeah.
each company sort of has their own experience with that. So it's great to hear yours.
What do you see most frequently? What's kind of across the board most common?
I think the most common for very early stage companies is free pilots.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
A
hard.
lot of those don't convert to paid. I don't know that people value things that are free, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's a great point as well. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's challenging, right? Because you need those first couple customers and, you're kind of willing to do anything to get them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I want to move to pricing. This is, again, always a great topic of discussion. Um, tell me a little bit, as much as you care to share, about kind of your pricing journey. And I know so many of the speakers who've come onto RetailX, who have sort of B2B business models, are like, all I do is think about pricing.
Yeah.
So tell me if that's true of you as well, and what you think about when you're thinking about pricing your product.
Absolutely. This is so hard. And one day you have this big epiphany, this big light bulb goes off, right? Like my recent one, for example, is prepaid phone minutes. Prepay your deliveries, and if you prepay this much, get them at this rate. The next bucket, prepaid phone minutes, rolling over things, right? You always have these creative ideas on it. And I think that it's worth, again, asking the price, like asking for a raise, right? I remember early on pitching things like, oh, it's $10. Oh, it's $5,000. You have to like see what the market is going for. And I think looking at other customers, but to be frank on this topic, one of my investors, I remember pitching, now a current investor, and he's unbelievably valuable. But I remember pitching to him and a couple other investors, and he asked what our revenue was going to be the following year, and we were raising our seed. And we were very, very early. We were nearly pre-product, pre-revenue. And this is the trade show days, like early, the flea market days. And I told him, I said something along the lines of, what early stage company have you invested in that has given you the right answer for that? Like what company at our stage has given you a number that actually comes out, on the other side true? I have no idea, but I would love to figure that out with you. Like, do you want to come on this journey together? And so again, I think it's being authentic to the truth, because we're all trying to figure it out. And in terms of our pricing model, it's 100% value based for the brand or retailer. So if the brand or retailer is doing a ton more deliveries, increasing their average order value, we are solely incentivized based on the success of the program with them. And so there's a couple different parts and pieces of that. Implementation depends. Most of the smaller customers have no implementation. A monthly recurring that is quite minimal, because we want to encourage more locations for each brand to open up. And then a transaction model. We have the luxury that since we aggregate these networks, we're letting them battle out the best possible price in real time. And so then we're passing that to the retailer. The retailer can say, I want to contribute exactly what I have built to my P&L for my traditional methods. I have $8 allocated to FedEx. I'm going to contribute that towards the cost of delivery. And right now, it's a really, really interesting time, and why I'm thinking about pricing even more and more recently is the surcharges that traditional methods are putting on for retailers. Or I just saw something yesterday, I think it was Gap or Nike, that they're limiting the amount, right?
UPS,
So
yeah.
It's crazy. It's just insane to me. I'm not banking on this forever within our model, but right now it's pretty convenient that it's less expensive for a retailer to utilize Shipsy than it is to send a traditional method. So, I mean, that's our pitch right now. Pay more and give it to your customers in 10 days if they get it this holiday season, or pay less, give it to them within an hour or tomorrow between 12 and 2. And so it's always a learning curve on pricing, and it is incredibly challenging.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think we talk a lot in these kind of sessions about kind of transaction-based pricing, and does that hurt? Can that hurt your model or hurt your pitch? Because depending on how you kind of structure it, the retailer doesn't know kind of what the end cost will be, right? Because it'll just be completely dependent on how great sales were that month or whatever. Have you had any pushback from that?
On the transaction side?
Yeah.
We haven't had a lot of pushback on it. I think it goes back to a brand or a retailer already has whatever amount allocated in their P&L towards traditional methods. We have seen a couple people play around with different things. For example, charging their customers more than our deliveries are and making money on that. That is, well, it's a little bit more old school mentality. I get it. And some organizations are just like that. The ones that we find that are wildly successful in improving their conversion and improving their average order value, return customers or new customers. So we've had a couple, we just had one with 52% new customers came from Shipsy deliveries, which is awesome from a competitive differentiation standpoint. Overall, we have a 13% improvement on conversion, even with traditional methods listed. I think that's instead of, do I want this? It turns into, do I want this or not? It goes from, do I want this or not to, do I want it in 10 days or do I want it right now? Oh, instead of, am I even going to make this purchase?
Right.
So I think that's a big part of it. We haven't got a ton of pushback on the transaction, but I think it's because they already have that built into their e-commerce.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So how long are sales cycles in this process? I mean, it seems like you have enough that you can, I don't think anybody can say customers may want it now. I'm a brand that cannot deliver that. So yes, like that seems sort of like a no-brainer, but obviously it's probably not that quick of a yes. So how long are your sales cycles?
It really depends on the customer segmentation. We have within our Shopify app store that people can go sign up on their own. So there's really not a sales cycle required on that side. And then overall, let's say it's someone who we reached out to that didn't go sign up on their own in the Shopify store. Those are a day to 7 days. And then the mid SMB is, anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And even for the large enterprise ones, our sales cycles have been anywhere from 60 to 90 days. So that's really, really, really fast. I've worked with a lot of the Nikes of the world and my previous background, and normally those things take a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so ours have been far, far more expedited than I originally anticipated, but it's great because instead of getting those customers like we originally thought in maybe 2 years, we started our first big batch a year ago. So yeah.
That's great. That is so unusual and amazing. And so much better for you, honestly, than some of these other stories that I hear, like 18 months sales cycle for, some ecom product, ecom software piece, whatever.
I'm a little bit biased as well, or I come from running enterprise B2B sales teams in the retail space. So I have learned a lot and have a lot of a big repository of things that work or don't work, or things that I've used in my past that I'm now repurposing for Shipsy, which is so fun to take a methodology that I used to use and had a lot of success with and working with reps, and now being able to make our Shipsy version of that.
Yeah, that's great. I have a couple more questions and then we're going to open it up to audience questions. So audience, if you would like to put your questions in the chat, you can start doing so. So Have you invested in kind of B2B press or sort of other paid marketing, either for those smaller customers or even for enterprise? Have you done any of that and has it worked for you?
We have not put a ton of money into marketing so far. Our customers have come quite organically to us. We hired a PR firm for the first 3 months after we closed our seed round. One, it was, a huge accomplishment for us in closing that, and we were really excited to announce with some of the investors that we had participation from. So we did an initial contract for 3 months with a PR company, and that really cycled through and started everything else. So I think that there were, maybe 10 different people that picked it up, and from that it turned into a snowball effect of some other writer saw it, or I spoke at an event and someone was there that also runs or is hosting an event, and so then it really started to spiral. Aside from that first 3 month stint that we did, everything has been pretty much inbound to us, which is awesome. But it's also a really exciting topic, and even more so now with COVID.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember hearing you on the Pitch podcast
Yes,
as well.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
I think a lot of that kind of stuff does help, right? Even if it's
Mhm.
if it's about fundraising, I'm sure there's some inbound that came from some of that.
It does. And that one came from, I think it was an event in San Francisco, and I met someone there that was involved with the pitch. So
Mhm.
my take on it, it's a really hard balance as a founder when you're wanting to go to all of these events. Is it going to be worth your time? And so thinking about that, and I would say you don't know unless you show up in most cases, and you never ever know what it'll lead to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Um, okay, so let's switch to kind of sales team. Like you obviously have had a lot of experience in sales. At what point did you hire more people in the sales team? What does your sales team look like right now? How have you kind of developed that?
We are thankfully just starting that process to get more sales support. So historically, it's been my team being incredibly flexible and wearing any and all hats. My marketing or operations, like everyone kind of sells. Everyone has their piece in it. And because I have, my old sales cheat sheets, I can help work with the team to help close a deal or be involved or not involved. And we're now just starting to bring on additional sales help. Something else that was really helpful that I would encourage, and Amy from Springboard recommended at one point as well, is that hiring someone on a commission basis and or someone from my old network on that. So that also has helped us a little bit in some of those network connections.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you're a little bit maybe different than a lot of the founders on this call in that you have a sales background. And I think most of the founders I meet don't have that background. So, if you hadn't had that background, would you have really hired people a little earlier than kind of where you've really ended?
Absolutely. 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 And now I'm really excited to be able to bring in and build my own team of sales, right? Like I've gotten to do it for other companies, other large companies, and it's so much more exciting when it's your widget and your baby, and so you can kind of mend that. But yeah, if I didn't have sales experience, 100% I would have brought someone on early on. I needed more support earlier on in managing our delivery networks, because keep in mind we have our delivery network partners, then we have our technology partners like Shopify, Salesforce, and then we have our customers, but we can't even go after customers until we have the other pieces built and in place. So I hired business development before sales because it's a lot managing all of those relationships. And that was a huge relief for me and allowed me to take some more time to focus on customers.
Yeah, great. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, okay, my last question before we go to the audience questions is um, what's the kind of one resource or book, blog, something that you
Mhm.
might recommend to founders that would help them learn about do sales and make that first, make their first sale?
My favorite go-to for this is a book called The Challenger Sale.
The Challenger
It's
sale?
The Challenger Sale. It's a little bit different approach, but has some really good principles about guiding your customers in the direction that they need to go and changing the frame of maybe what they think they want and educating them on that, but them coming to their own conclusions. So the Challenger Sale is definitely one of my favorites, and another method that I've always found really successful is almost taking what are the 5 things that you need for your sales cycle to close. You probably need to know who writes the check. You probably need to know when you're launching, what's the date. And then going into every call with those 5 primary things, saying this is the one I'm going to try and check this one of 5 boxes, let's say today on the call. Like look at the 5 things that you need to close a deal, whether that's who writes the check, the launch, are there any other people involved within that, like the process that they have for it, and what's driving it? Like, what's the why? Why are they even talking to you in the first place? And using that core event or consequence that they have if they don't work with you, thinking about it from their perspective, I think is another really good one. So then if you check all your 5 boxes, you close the sale. If you don't check a box, well, you know exactly what you did wrong and can apply it in the next time.
That's a really great rubric. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the audience questions now. And the first question is from Kate, which was sort of alluded to, but her question is, what is the right time to hire a sales rep?
Good question. I think the right time is when you just can't have the bandwidth anymore. Like I found myself working a lot less, even, we're early on in this process internally even. And I found myself putting my business planning almost went to the end of the list because I had to be on a customer call. And so I think being aware of when those important things are slipping that are your job as a CEO. Like, I remember sending out an investor update a day later than I committed to, which that's not, you shouldn't ever say you're going to do something, or it drives me mad when someone says that they're going to do something and they don't do it. And so I started to notice some of those things slipping because I was focusing on sales. So I would say being aware of that. And are there other things that your time can be spent towards to drive more value, and what can you hand off to others?
Yeah, that's great advice. Given also from Kate, oops. Oh, sorry. No, I skipped one from Nicole. When should a startup hire sales, and what do you suggest to look for? So we've talked about the when, but what do you look for?
This is an interesting one. I originally thought in this process that it had to be someone that has an amazing experience within this vertical. I would say the things to look for in a person, depending on how much time you have, they probably need to have some industry expertise or knowledge at least, because if you're a startup, you probably don't have time to teach them the things about retail or what an inventory management system is, let alone all of the other ones out there. So I think it depends on how much time you have to spend with them and to train them. So looking at some of their background qualifications, for me, I would rather have someone that is young and scrappy and probably a little bit less expensive that you can really take under your wing and help coach and develop in that. But again, it really depends on how much time you have. One of my favorite interview questions, and something I don't know that I've ever skipped it in an interview, is asking people what their first job was. I think that it really helps understand who that person is. If it's someone who said, I don't know, I was the neighborhood wrangler for all the kids and made garage sale or hosted the garage sale, right? It's like, oh, so you can work with a lot of different parts or pieces, or I worked in a pizza shop and, had angry old men yelling at me, or whatever it might be. Or maybe it's something later. Maybe they went to school forever and got their first job when they're 35. It's like, okay, that's great, but I need someone scrappy and with a lot of grit. So we're probably not going to be a fit. So I think it's a really, really sure sign. of that.
That's a great question. I love that question. I'm going to use that.
It's entertaining.
The next question is from Kate. Given the lack of in-person events, any thoughts on how to best leverage a presence at a virtual event?
I think that a lot of trade shows are still trying to figure this out. I found that we got asked to participate in one of the Shop Talk events, and I found that being as direct as you can, there was, I think, a series of 15-minute meetings. So I think to get more engagement, a lot of the shows have a Slack channel. And I think, again, it goes back to doing your homework before the event, understanding who's there, and then following up with them or asking a question, participating in a group event that you know that they're attending in. It sounds I sound like a little bit stalkery. I'm gonna look at exactly all of these things and then talk to you. But I think the Slack is a good part of engagement. And I think that with everything being virtual, it's almost made us more efficient, right? Instead of a normal hour meeting that they would schedule, it's 15 minutes, and being direct of, what do you do? Like, is there a fit here? We're just trying to understand most of the time. So simplifying the messaging as well, I think, is a really, really helpful one.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. Another one from Nicole. How should we pay sales reps in a startup? Should we pay equity at all?
Yes. This one is hard. I think sales in a startup, it's so hard when you're figuring out your pricing model, right? It's here's our forecast, but it might change because of our pricing model. So I feel like everything else stems from that really hard pricing that we talked about. So I would say, yes, if you can pay commission. I think that it's probably a balance of 60% base and 40% commission, but also have stipulations in there that work and adjust for both of you. So if I'm coming into an organization to run sales, yes, there should be an equity component eventually, but maybe it's after a year of working with the company. So you really know that I'm here for the long run. It helps get their skin in the game, or maybe it's a longer vesting. So I think, yes, you should, because that salesperson should be incentivized to really have some skin in the game and feel a part of that building. And they're taking a big risk on a startup too, right? Like, it's not a secure job that they know is going to be around forever. So they're taking a big risk on you too. So making sure that it's the right person and making it safe and adjusting accordingly for both of you.
Yeah, that's great advice. Moving on to the next one from Wirita. Wirata. I apologize, I completely butchered your name. We are a B2C that is now pivoting to B2B, because that's where we believe the bigger opportunity is. We're still seed stage, haven't yet raised a seed round. How would you suggest we improve our B2B sales strategy and improve our sales goal with limited funding at this stage, as well as upskill in B2B sales?
I hear you. You know, I get it. I empathize towards that scenario. B2C is something that to me is almost a black box. I'm not used to digital ads or paid marketing. I know what I like and I know the look and feel as a consumer, but I'm not a B2C expert by any means. I think switching to B2B is really interesting, and there's a lot of opportunity within that. I would say narrow the focus in it, because if there's partners, I don't know the ins and out of it, but I'll take Shopify, for example. So we're working in that partnership, or maybe it's through something like the Female Founder Collective, or what are the other partners or preferred partners you can work with to help maximize your resources. So for example, we have a partner, Arca, that does packaging that we can recommend and be another value added resource to our brands. And so what are those other partnerships that you can form from a business development perspective to offer your consumers additional, or your customers, the B2B, the retailers or whatever space it's in that value, and maybe do a, I don't know, 10% rev share kickback with your partner, and you both do it. So I'd say try and get creative about those partnerships, but really, really narrow the focus, because if it's something like an item management system or something. Like there are so many, and you will get lost in the weeds for days. So make a list of, who are the top 10 partners that we could work with and value, and then how do we go sell to them, that it would be a valuable partnership, and thinking about it from their perspective.
Yeah. And you've done that, right? Like you briefly mentioned that you get some of your retailers and brands now through your kind of delivery partners.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
And a big value add, always thinking about the value add for them instead of for you. So for our delivery partners, they like us because we can use them during on or off peak times when they're not delivering a cheeseburger across the street, let's say.
Right.
And so thinking about it from their perspective. And the packaging one came up because a lot of our customers were having a lot of challenges around packaging. And that's something as well that you can do, is really asking your customers, like, Shipsy, unrelated to Shipsy, what's going on in your business? Like, what are the other strategic initiatives you're working on? And are there other ways that we can help support that?
Yeah, that's great. Another question from Nicole. Do you recommend any online training courses?
I would say I don't think it would hurt. I don't think that it would hurt. I can maybe follow up in the notes and peek around of what I have in my old repository of things. But there's a lot of resources out there available. And so, yeah, I think I'm always a fan of continued education or learning for it, but I can try and dig up some recs on that.
Yeah, and if you do, I can put it into the RetailX Slack and share it with everyone.
Okay.
Benjamin, thank you for putting in the link to the Challenger sale. Appreciate that. From Simon or Simone, sorry, again, not good with the names. Could you tell us more about your first deals? How did you get your first second customer? How much time did it take? How ready was your product?
How ready was our product? Getting our first customer, and how ready was our product in that process? Ours was a combination of a lot of different things. Our product has changed vastly since our first batch of retailers. The sales cycle and that process, always ending the meeting with, what are the next steps? Or even asking, it sounds like you have some next steps in mind. What are those? Or the way that you frame things, I think, is really important as well. Think about those 5 boxes again. Who else are they looking at going with? There's got to be some kind of a competition out there. So for us, traditional shipping is a competitor. Like, it's a competitor if it's any other alternative to you, or doing nothing could be in that portion too. So I think understanding and asking those questions, all related to whatever those 5 boxes are, just focus on that and you'll close the deal. As far as a product perspective, our product was not as advanced as it is now, but sometimes you have to take that chance. If a customer is pushing for a certain date, you can say, what can you give and take? Okay, you want all these bells and whistles by this date. Yes, we are a scrappy startup team, but in order for our team to start building, you have to sign a contract. So if you want to launch by that time, that means that the contract has to be signed and back up from that launch date. And so I think those are some things that can really, really help as well.
And it's interesting that you said that about the bells and whistles, because I think this one of the previous RetailX sessions, I believe one of the founders talked about, they didn't really have a product when they got their first big enterprise client. They sort of had a product, but it definitely wasn't the product that the client wanted. And so they were kind of building a contract and saying, not that it was fully vaporware, but that there was gonna be a product that this customer could use at the date given. And I think that might be the question here, is like, does it have to be fully baked to sell it?
I would say it doesn't have to be fully baked. Contracts take a long time, right? Our 60 to 90 days sales cycle is really, really fast. I would say it doesn't have to be fully baked, but make sure that you are clear and transparent about that to the customer, so that if something goes wrong, there's no surprises, because you have one shot to get this larger enterprise probably. And if your first deliverable, you're late and you can't do it, well, you're just ruining the trust from the beginning of the relationship. So maybe it's a balance, or how can you balance it out? You want all these bells and whistles. Maybe it's not fully baked right now. You want these bells and whistles by this date. Okay, what if we take 3 of the 5 can by that date? Or, ask the customer, if you want all of these bells and whistles, here's the time frame that we think we can do it by. And then being transparent throughout the process, or giving them an update every week on where you are, or flexing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of large enterprise retailers will also take advantage of any startup. Build, be my custom dev shop. No, like that's not our business. But sometimes you have to do some of those hard things in the beginning, early on, to get that engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice. And I think that custom dev shop thing happens a lot.
Too much.
To a lot of founders. Next question from Gustavo. Are you mostly working with big retailers or brands? Have you been plugging in your systems into theirs, i.e. can an order from a retailer's website be directed to Shipsy?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we're primarily, I would say, our customer base is pretty wide between the small SMB and the larger ones. Our smallest is a small shop around the corner who enters a delivery address when their customer texts them and says, I want this, and that's all they have to do. On the other side, and maybe they have one shop. On the other side of the spectrum, we've opened up anywhere from 200 to 250 locations in a matter of days, because again, the driver networks are already there and available, or 1,000 locations. So ours is a balance. And then as far as can an order from a retailer's website be directed to Shipsy? Yes. So Shipsy shows up at checkout, let's say online, 7 to 10 days overnight. Shipsy delivery appears based on business rules. Shipsy only appears when we know there's a driver available, we know the consumer location, we have visibility onto the inventory. And then that goes into whatever regular system it would. It's exactly like a buy online, pick up from store. However you have that order processed, except we're going to pick it up for the customer and deliver it. And so that goes into their systems. We've also had, this is a tough balance on that custom conversation. We've also learned that we can adapt to retail systems that are maybe not omni-channel capable. So no, I don't want to do this in every scenario, but if in the instance that we have an opportunity with a customer that makes sense for both of us, and their online inventory is reading only from, let's say, a warehouse in California today, but they have flagship locations in New York and San Francisco and Austin and other locations. If we have visibility onto their inventory for e-com, and we have visibility onto their store point of sale or whatever other system that might be, we can read both of that inventory so that their online points to New York, or Shipsy shows up in New York, Shipsy shows up in Austin, even though they're not technically omni-channel capable.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, from Jonathan, how did you manage/accelerate your initial enterprise integrations when IT teams frequently don't want to prioritize integrating a startup? Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a really good question. They were pushing us in the beginning for timelines. It was, we had the luxury, we weren't pushing them on, you have to go live soon. It was the reverse. Their team was saying, we have this big strategic initiative that we need to go live for. And I would say adding that to the 5 boxes, maybe it's a certain event that they have. Maybe holiday is a big time for them, or Mother's Day, or whatever the vertical might be. Think about what initiative or what strategic initiative your business is tied to, because then if they push off those delays, let's say with the technical team, or if they are trying to drag their feet, well, wait a minute. You said that this project had to be done by December 10th, because otherwise you're going to miss out on X, Y, and Z revenue or customer base, or it won't fall in line with this marketing promotion. So go back to those original boxes on the timeline and why they're doing it and what strategic initiative it's related to, because then you can go back and say, look, this was the time that you said we needed a launch by.
Yeah.
Has that changed? And that's where those weekly check-ins are really, really helpful.
Yeah. And it's almost maybe taking that even a step backwards and saying, if your product is really tied to initiatives that many retailers might have, only focus on the ones that actually really care about this so
Yes,
much.
exactly. Or buddy up with their teams. It's like, how can I help you get this across the finish line internally?
Yeah.
And using that to your advantage.
Yeah.
Or how are they incentivized? Maybe the IT guy isn't incentivized to get this project live. So in your discovery, find out what motivates him. What is he compensated on? I mean, don't ask him for his salary, and if it's tied to his check at the end of the day. But how does he view success, and why is it important in his role within the organization?
Yeah. That's a great point. Okay, from Nicole. Have you leveraged partnerships with any consulting agencies in a vertical? What do you recommend about this kind of partnership? Did you have lawyers involved throughout onboarding your customers, or did you use pre-existing templates for contracts? That was a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm. It's good though. They're all really good. Consulting agencies, yes. And I actually know a founder who runs a brand who is absolutely brilliant at this. She has someone to do social. She has someone to do any presentations. She has an outsourced accounting. And finding those partners is so important early on, to find those true partners. And it can save you a lot of time, right? I'm not going to make a digital promotion. Like, I'm just not, that's not my skill set. So I think anything that is not within your immediate skill set or strengths, yes, go find a partner for it. Marketer hire is one that I would really, really recommend. We had a lot of success with. You can slice and dice things. They have different programs, different resources for brands and retailers. They're a really, really good one. And then for partnerships, I would say looking at the value that they have, or that they're going to be getting out of you. And then pre-existing templates on contracts. In the beginning, I worked with our legal counsel and had them create a boilerplate template first, and you can at least use that as a start. Same thing with employee agreements and consulting agreements and board documents. Like, it sucks. A lot of the paperwork is a really big stack of minutia in most cases, but it's worth doing it right from the beginning and make your template. Notion is another really good tool that has like templates, and you can customize in other ways that we've started using. That's really, really improved the efficiency in that.
Great.
You might as well do it right from the beginning if you can.
From Vincent, how much did you spend on your customer acquisition cost when you just started versus now?
This one is pretty easy for us because we haven't spent, I mean, we had the PR for 3 months. So we're probably an anomaly in this one. So I'm probably not the best use case for it, for that question. But we have a plan to spend money on some of these things after our next raise. But for now, we don't need it, and we can get by without it.
Great. Next question from Tope. Thank you for telling me how to pronounce your name. Did
Mm-hmm.
you have an integration approach for each type of e-commerce site type, or did you co-create them with each client's dev team? Thanks. You both are awesome, very inspirational, and what I needed to hear today. Well, thank you for the compliments.
So nice. So nice. Made my day. Thank you. We had couple different, in the beginning, it was really rough because we had to learn all of these things with integrations, right? So in the beginning, it was more, we know that we have to do a, let's say, Shopify app, and we know that these are the things that fall in our box, but it's really hard from a startup perspective. Google Pay, for example, right? Of course, something we should think of that we need to adjust if someone has Google Pay. How does Shipsy work with Google Pay? And you almost don't know what things are going to happen until you try it. So I was really keen in the beginning to say, Google Pay, what about this chatbot system? What are all the 50 million apps in the App Store that we need to play nice with? And even if you list them out and think of all the scenarios, you don't really know until you just go build it, or figure those things out. So we had pre-built cartridges that then we had to adjust significantly for our larger enterprise retailers. Now, this is the biggest change in our business. So for enterprise, it's a build your own API, drag and drop whatever you need, reducing the customization, making it applicable for everyone. Oh, by the way, let's send it to your inventory, your warehouse management. but really continuing to focus on what are the core things and who are those target customers within that.
Right. Okay, we have one last question, which is which sales tactic had the highest success rate in getting first customers? Was it cold calling, personal network, having product directly on the Shopify App Store?
I would say not cold calling, not on the App Store. My old network was a good one, or was an easier one. It came from, most of our customers have come from speaking events that I've done, or a blog that I've wrote that someone liked or were connected with. That's really a lot of them. I would say one other thing in the cold calling, or even if it's cold outreach, to test different approaches. There's probably a light and playful, maybe it's funny, approach that you send if you're sending out blind emails, or maybe it's a long and formal message, or maybe it's just short and sweet to the point, like, here's what I want to talk about. Here's how much I think we could increase this, or here's the value that I believe that we could provide, and testing those different approaches with different audiences to see what that feedback is. Is another good recommendation.
Great. Well, that is all the time we have. Chelsie, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you for sharing all your experience, all your advice.
Of course, so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. And to everyone else, thank you for joining us. And like I said, you'll be getting an email with some information about the last session of the year, as well as an invitation to the Slack community. And I'll let you know when the recording is live. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.